Hello and welcome back to Can I Kick It, a series all about freestyle footbags here on Passback. Today on episode 2, Ivan and I will be taking a look at 8 entry-level bags in order to find one that will be good for your first purchase and help get you on the right foot for learning this great sport. There are a lot of online shops and a ton of inexpensive bags to choose from, so we tried to pick a cross-section of bags with varying panel counts, fill materials from different brands, all while staying in the $15 and under range. We got 2 of each bag, one for me, one for Ivan, and I'll be focusing on playability while Ivan will be looking at the nerdy construction details. Let's take a look at these from least to most expensive. Up first is the Stolly, purchased for $5 from World Footbag. This has the honor of being both the least expensive and worst bag we looked at because you really do get what you pay for. Contrary to its name, the Stolly does not stall well, nor does it kick well or really do anything well. It neither flies straight nor lands straight, and it's overall a nightmare to play with.
Our tests with the Stolly also confirmed Mount's observations. If you're interested in seeing how we conducted these tests, we're thinking of releasing a behind-the-scenes video showing just that, along with some bonus tests and even a full comparison of our entry-level bags to several professional-level footbags. But let's get back to the Stolly. This bag was the worst at holding its shape, and was incredibly inconsistent with how it stalled. If it landed on a flat panel, it was among one of the best performing bags that we tested, but more often than not, it would land on a seam and roll off if there was even a slight angle on the stalling surface. The Stolly also absorbed up to 17% of its body weight when dropped in water, so playing with it outside or with sweaty hands will only make the bag want to roll more. The fill in the bag is pure sand, which I actually prefer compared to the industrial waste that is used to fill some of the other bags we looked at, so this was one of the few things it had going for it. The poor geometry of the panels, thin woven fabric, and sloppy machine stitching is ultimately what lets this bag down and makes it so inconsistent. The fabric does not hold up against abrasion, the threads are weak, and you can already see the fabric starting to fray on what's essentially a brand new bag. This bag might be passable for casual kicking, but even there it probably wouldn't survive for very long.
Up next is an official Whammo Hacky Sack Rebel purchased right from their website for $7. This bag isn't that great for stalling, and I guess it's okay for kicking, but it doesn't give you that much control for either. We were supposed to get 2 different kinds of hacky sacks, the Rebel and the Riot, but they accidentally sent us 4 Rebels, so I guess we'll never know what the Riot is like.
And while we may never know what the Riot is like, the Rebel seems to be a slight upgrade over the Stolly we looked at before. Funnily, the Rebel was actually worse at stalling than the Stolly, but at least it was incredibly, consistently bad at it, so you can actually try to compensate for how poorly it plays. This is definitely a backhanded compliment, but it is still 1 compliment more than the Stolly got from me. The rest of its qualities were more or less equal to the Stolly. The fabric is a thin woven mesh that is held together with flimsy machine-stitched threads, and it's already falling apart in my hands. When subjected to my abrasion test, the hacky sack survived twice as long as the Stolly, thanks to a second layer of fabric needed to contain the superfine fill. But when it did fail, the sand got everywhere. The fill is a pure, fine silica sand, which did a surprisingly good job staying dry, but there's way too much of it inside the bag, making it one of the worst performers when it comes to stalling and rolling. As I said, it's better than the Stolly, but only marginally so, and that's not enough for me to give it my stamp of approval.
Next, we have a trio of Sandbags, a Dirtbag Classic, a Sandmaster, and a Dirtbag 14, all purchased from World Footbag for $8, $10, and $12 respectively. I actually played a lot with the Sandmaster when I first started. I think you might be able to tell. Despite the differences in price and panel counts, these all play about the same, which is to say pretty alright. If I had to pick a favorite though, it would be the Dirtbag Classic, which is a little more immediately stallable. The best thing about these is that they're ready to play right out of the box, no breaking required. Living up to my declaration in the first episode as a big dumb jock, I swore that all of these bags were super light, but they are in fact all right around 60 grams. Because of that seeming lighter than they really are feel, I have some trouble playing completely normally, but for basic tricks they're totally fine.
All 3 of these bags are a measurable improvement over the first 2 that we tested. Of the 3, the Dirtbag 14 panel was the best for stalling and even came close to a few professional level footbags that we tested. It was also the best of the 3 in terms of abrasion resistance. However, both Dirtbag models absorbed over 20% of their weight in water, which is where the Sandmaster beat them handily. The fill is the same for all 3 bags, and it's something that I would describe as a mixture of sand, rubber dust, and cardboard. This mix reminds me of what I would expect to find in a pile on the floor of a shoe factory. So, yeah, industrial waste. It might play nice, but I would expect the performance to degrade with time. The fabric and hand stitching of the 3 bags is almost identical. The stitches on all 3 bags are tied off with 1 or 2 knots, and the thicker threads are already fraying, so I would expect that to be a likely point of failure in the future. The Sandmaster had the sloppiest stitch spacing, bite, and gather, which in turn meant that it had slightly less consistent and worse stalling performance. However, these differences were only noticeable in a controlled test, so I'd say that all 3 bags would serve you just fine as your first foot bag.
Finally, we have a trio of 32 panel bags, a Dragonfly Assassin, a Bomb Footbags Heat Mini Pro, and a Fat Tire Pro, Fat Tire being a sub-brand of Dirtbag. The Dragonfly and Bomb bags were purchased from their own websites for $12 and $13 respectively, and the Fat Tire from World Footbag for $16. Both the Dragonfly and Bomb bags need a lot of break-in time, and I don't think they're ever going to get completely soft, but even so, they're actually pretty good. I really don't have any issues playing normally with either of them. The Fat Tire, on the other hand, doesn't need any break-in, and while it's super fun to kick because of how bouncy it is, it really doesn't stall well, which is too bad because I actually really like the size and feel of it.
I found the 3 32 panel bags to be very similar in terms of stallability and their resistance to rolling. However, the Fat Tire was very inconsistent. When it comes to this price range and panel count, consistency is one of the most important aspects I look at, so this was definitely disappointing for me. As expected, the 32 panel bags all outperformed the lower panel count bags with their durability, although the Dragonfly's lower results were a bit surprising given the thickness of the fabric. The hand stitching was consistent across all 3 bags, and the Bomb 32 even used a fused polyester fabric similar to Ultra Suede, which is found in higher-end professional foot bags. All 3 bags had metal fill, although the Fat Tire mixed in some of the industrial waste dampening material that I complained about in the previous section, ruining an otherwise good fill of flat stainless steel discs. The Dragonfly and Bomb bags had a very similar fill, although the Bomb bag fill had signs of rust already showing, so I would expect both bags to be a bit of a pain to wash in the future. Out of the 3, the Bomb 32 scored really well in the tests, with the Dragonfly coming in at a close second.
Okay, let's talk recommendation and value. Firmly in the no pile is the Stolly. The $5 is tempting, but don't be lured by the siren's call because it does not play well in the slightest. The only people I see getting any use out of this are aspiring stitchers who could maybe study the design and learn what not to do. In the maybe pile, I'd put the Hacky sack and the Fat Tire. Neither is that great for stalling, but the Hacky sack could be a good juggling hybrid bag, and the Fat Tire sure is fun to kick. In the good pile, the bags that are good for both kicking and stalling are the trio of Sandbags and the Dragonfly and Bomb 32s. Since they don't need any break-in, the Sandbags are going to be an easier entry to the sport, but if you stick with it, you probably want to upgrade sooner rather than later. The 32s need more work and patience up front to get really playable, but I think they're a better long-term investment as you move beyond the basic tricks. Whichever of these 5 you pick, however, you'll be off to a good start learning the basics. Now, obviously these are not the only good inexpensive bags out there, but our coverage of them does end here. If you do want to expand your search to options that we didn't cover, you should be able to take the information from today combined with the previous episode and apply it to any bag you're interested in buying. If you have a favorite entry-level bag that we didn't cover today, feel free to let us know in the comments. That concludes episode 2 of Can I Kick It, and hopefully we've helped you get a good first freestyle foot bag. However, like all sports equipment, even the best foot bags need care and maintenance, so in episode 3, we're going to teach you how to treat your bags in order to get the best use and most life out of them. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.